We've covered the methodology, we've covered the resume. It's now time to talk about our approach phase, right? In our methodology, our approach is the last phase. This is literally where we make our approach to hiring managers. This is the most important part. Yeah? We'll use a document called Letter of Interest, LOI. By now, you already know what department you're targeting, right? What they do, the supply of roles, their area of expertise. You know their departmental structure and what sort of skills and experiences they're looking for, right? Now with our LOI, we're just going to give it to them. We're going to give the hiring managers what they're looking for. It's their job now to see a fit for you. But by giving them the skills that are most needed in the departments, you're creating a perfect match, right? So in your LOI, you need to establish credibility. You'll have to talk about your achievements and skills. Essentially, all we want to do is to show them that you've done it before and that you can do it again. That's the core of it. Hiring is a game of guessing. Nobody can be sure of a candidate based on an hour-long interview. It's impossible, right? I mean, you're making an educated guess and taking a leap of faith. And in this process, your LOI's entire purpose is to ensure them that you're a match, at least on paper. As simple as that. And to do that, you need to get 3 things right. What are those? 1, it has to be the right profile. Remember how we talked about the relevant experience versus general experience in the resume module? It applies here too. Your LOI needs to highlight your relevant experience and, in fact, relevant achievements, right? A lot of the things I covered in the resume module, it applies here too. In our methodology, what is your first touch point? It is your LOI, not your resume. So if you don't do a good job with this document, then there won't be a need to use your resume. Okay? 2, it has to be the right hiring manager. This is where you spend your time to find the right person on LinkedIn or on Google. We covered this before. Don't rush this stage, right? You have to make sure the hiring manager is heading the correct department. Otherwise, there won't be a match. We need that match. Is it easy? It's not easy. You'll have to spend at least 10 minutes or more to find the right person for each department. Maybe up to an hour for certain positions, right? You're going to have to go through LinkedIn, their LinkedIn profiles, all of the people searching on Google, reading their company website, reading personal publications, right? There's so many resources available. And now the third key element here is your relevant profile. If your entire background is in public accounting, you can't target roles in marketing. Having said that, you can indeed target roles and its peripherals as long as you have transferable skills. Okay, now, writing your LOI is a lot of work, right? I mean, we'll get into the details later in this module. It takes time, it takes effort, and unless you're really motivated, you will have difficulty getting started, right? And if you're in that situation, I have a suggestion for you. A different way of looking at things, right? This is something I do all the time, and who knows, maybe it's going to help you too. We said 3 key elements, right? What were they? Right profile, right person, right LOI. Yeah? You get these 3 right, then you have a almost 100% chance of succeeding. It's a mathematical certainty, right? Maybe not in the first shot, but eventually you'll get the job, 100% guaranteed. Now, if you get the job, if you get the job, assume that you only make a salary of $60,000 per year. Not a lot, you know. You'll probably make a lot more than that. But just for the sake of simplicity, let's say you make $60,000, and let's say you stay in that job for 3 years, meaning you'll get $180,000 from that company. True? The math is easy. Now, what were the inputs? There were 3 inputs to get that outcome of $180,000. That means each of those 3 steps are worth $60,000 of benefit. Now, the way my mind works is, you know what? If this thing that I do gives me $60,000, no problem, I'll do it. I'll do a proper research, no problem. $60,000. I'll spend a full day or 2 on this, no issues. My LOI, $60,000, no problem. I'll spend a day on this. Making my profile relevant, no problem. $60,000. I'll do it. I mean, in financial sense, my day isn't worth $60,000. Is yours worth $60,000? See, when you quantify the benefits, then you find the motivation to do it. And considering that your LOI, letter of interest, needs to be about 500 words, that means each word you type is worth $120. Each word. Imagine. Now, amongst the three criteria, the right person, right LOI, and the right profile, two of them are relatively speaking easy to do. You can spend a day or two or even a week to be done with your LOI and your research to find the right people. It's easy. You can do it, right? It's just laborious. The problem is the third one, your profile. I want to talk about this a bit more. The vast majority of you, about 70% of you, have the right profiles and, more importantly, the right expectations. You're good to go. If you can, shoot for Mars, right? With LIG, you'll get to Mars. It's a proven method, a well-worn path, and if you're shooting for the moon, shoot for the moon, no problem. But for some of you, about 30% of you, we need to align your expectations. Sometimes, to get to Mars, you'll have to stop by the moon first, meaning you'll need to have a stepping stone. You don't yet have the skills or an attractive profile to shoot for Mars. You can achieve anything you want, but sometimes not tomorrow. What do I mean by this? Again, I'll give you a couple examples. If you have, for example, no consulting background, or that you don't have a very rare and very special skill, or that you don't come from world's top organizations and with an MBA degree from world's top business schools, major consulting firms will not hire you. It's almost a certainty, right? The consulting firms sell your mandate for as much as $5,000 a day. Per day, $5,000, imagine, right? So they have to make sure your profile is so impressive that their clients are willing to pay that much for that profile to work on their teams, right? So if you have no MBA degree from a top business school, if you have no international work experience, no previous consulting work, or very rare and special skills, then you'll very unlikely end up in Big Four or consulting firms. Again, not just for consulting. Same goes with any industry. Investment banks. If you don't have a top education, top employer brands in your resume, top skills that you can demonstrate tangibly, Goldman Sachs is not going to hire you tomorrow, right? Again, this is applicable for any industry and any company, not just investment banking or consulting. Like marketing, P&G or Unilever won't hire you right away. It just won't happen. Right? I mean, prior to LIG, if you had a 1 in 100,000 chance, post LIG, you will have 1% chance, right? If you don't have the right profile. 1% is still significantly greater than 1 in 100,000, but it's still 1%. 1% is 1%. Again, I repeat, this is not just for consulting, right? It can be applicable in any industry, engineering, IT, chemistry, you name it. That was the bad part. But the good part is that it doesn't mean it won't happen later. This is where a stepping stone comes into effect. That's what I meant by stopping by the moon first before getting to Mars. Moon is your stepping stone. I'll share with you my own story on this one. By the way, I never draw conclusions based on my own experience, right? Not alone, not solely. It would be wrong to do it. I mean, you need statistical confidence to draw conclusions. But this is relevant, and I know with 100% certainty that this is the way it works. That's the reason why I want to share my story here. Prior to my MBA, my background was predominantly in finance and private equity. I started off my career at Standard & Poor's, S&P, as an analyst. Then I moved to Dubai and I worked for a private equity organization called SSLI. And then I had my MBA from a top European business school with hopes to get into management consulting with Big Four or with strategy boutiques like McKinsey, BCG, and Bain. Now, I tried all the major consulting firms after my MBA. Nothing worked, right? And when I say I tried, trust me, I tried. I mean, I pushed really hard, right? I was determined. I mean, yeah, I tried. And after that, I was really disappointed because imagine I spent all that money on an MBA degree with hopes of getting into consulting with Big Four, and now none of them were interested in me. Right? I mean, and the problem wasn't just that, you know, I didn't have the right profile, because I got the 2 out of 3 elements right, but the third one was missing. That's when I noticed that I needed a stepping stone. Another consulting company, not one of the big four, not necessarily the one that is in Champions League, but still a strong brand name, you know, somewhere I could gain credibility in management consulting in that domain, and also learn the ins and outs of the industry, right? That was my game plan. With everything I taught you in this course, I made my research, I crafted my LOI, I sent my LOI to the CEO. It wasn't a very large consulting company, my stepping stone. So the hiring manager in that case was the CEO himself. I sent my LOI. He didn't respond first. I followed up after a week. He was interested, and he asked me to interview with one of the directors in the firm. I flew to London. I interviewed with them. And eventually, after about a month of back and forth, the interviews and everything, it was done. I was hired, right? This was, I believe, year 2010. But I knew that my eye was still on the target. Accountability, the name of that consulting firm, was not my end goal. I wanted to work for the best management consulting firm in the world, right? I wanted to be surrounded by the best talent in the world. I wanted to work with them, learn from them, grow with them, right? And eventually reach those multiples of six-figure salaries. And who knows, maybe one day become a partner, shoot for seven-figure salaries and bonuses. So after about 2 years with accountability, after having that in my resume, developing consulting skills, after having consulting clients on my own, I reactivated LIG. This time, voila, success. I joined PwC Consulting in 2012 and worked there successfully for about 5 years. And I even became a manager. And in my business line, there were no directors. So I was only one level below partner when I left. So the point of this all is that you can achieve anything you want, but sometimes just not tomorrow, right? And once again, this is applicable in any industry, be it engineering, IT, R&D, you name it. And when you come to think of it, your career is a 40-year journey, 4 decades. What difference does it make if you invest in your profile for 2 years with that stepping stone company and then join your target company 2 years later? What difference does it make? Let's continue with the intricacies of LOI. In your LOI, you want to shoot for quality, not quantity. Remember, it's $120 a word. You don't have to write for pages and pages. You don't have to write more than 500 words. LOI is like your bait in fishing, right? You throw your bait and your hook, and you wait for them to eat the bait, right? This is very similar. Once they hook, then you reel them in with your resume. What does it mean? It means your LOI, in your LOI, you'll mention the most important, relevant achievements of your career, and you'll ask if you can send them your resume for a more detailed look. That's your call to action at the end of the document, right? Now, some LIG members directly shoot for an interview as their call to action. That's fine too. I have no objection to it. In fact, as far as I can tell, as far as I can observe, both yield about the same results. Whether your call to action at the end of your LOI is asking for permission to send your resume or directly asking for an interview, they both yield about the same results. You know, you can actually have a hybrid approach here, right? You can both ask for an opportunity to meet, and also if they'd like to have a deeper look at your profile, you'd be happy to send them your resume too, right? So the hybrid approach, it can very well work too. Another important element here is related to your research. Don't approach members of the same business unit. We're creating trust here, right? So your trust will be damaged if you approach multiple people from the same department and they find out about it at their lunch break, right? It will be awkward. Yeah, that's why your research is important. The hiring manager, keep this in mind, is the one who holds the budget of the department. There's only one person for every department, right? If it's a small organization with less than 50 people, that's typically the general manager or the CEO, right? If it's a very large organization with thousands of employees, then that's typically maybe a vice president in charge of that particular department, or a director, or if it's even a larger organization, then manager. So I need to mention something here. The majority of your responses will come in after you follow up. There's a template that you can use for your follow-up if you want to. It's in the frequently asked questions section in this course, in this program. So if you need help with it, please feel free to take a look at it, get your inspiration from it. And the reason why you follow up is very simple. You want to make them aware that it was not an outreach out of the blue. It's not like you got bored one day and decided to reach out to them, right? You want to indicate that you genuinely want to work with them, right? So if you receive no response after a week, make sure you follow up. This is not optional. It's a requirement. Even after a follow-up, if you still don't get any response, then only move on with the next in line, right? If it's a large multinational company, don't ditch the company yet, right? There are hundreds of potential targets for you in there, right? There are hundreds of potential hiring managers. There are different departments, different business lines, business units, lines of services, right? It's especially true if you're willing to relocate. Okay, about this, one question I get a lot is what should be the subject line? It can be as simple as greetings or anything that piques their interest, right? To open the email or LinkedIn email, but doesn't reveal much that they choose to ignore it. So the open rate for LinkedIn email is about 50%, right? So there's already a very high likelihood that they will read your email when you send it the first time. But it's almost 100% certainty that they will read it when you follow up, right? And speaking of LinkedIn email, I want to underline something here. I do not recommend you send them a connection request. Wait for them to respond to your request, then you send your message. I repeat, I do not recommend this. Don't do this. I recommend you use LinkedIn's email feature. It's a paid service, but it's worth it, right? Plus, if you've never used it before, you'll be given free credits anyway. But even after you run out of free credits, I suggest you still use their service. It'll cost you some money, fine, but it's definitely worth it. I mean, compared to sending an email, you'll have significantly more positive responses with email, and you'll start a relationship based on solid trust. Because emails are intrusive. They haven't given you permission to send them an email, right? That's why I don't suggest you do that. Your first option should be email. But if you're on a really strict budget and that you don't want to spend that money on LinkedIn email credits, then it's obviously your choice. And in that case, there's actually a free tool called Volant. I'll place a link under this video. You can simply insert the LinkedIn profile URL of your target hiring manager, and then that software, that website, is going to give you the email address associated with that profile. But if you decide to use email, there is one other problem or obstacle that you have to find a solution for, and that is the fact that you don't know if they read the email, right? So for that, there is a solution called HubSpot Sales Track Email. That service is free, and it will let you know if the recipient has read your email. Otherwise, you won't know if you should follow up or if you should move on with the next person in line, right? So use that service as well. You will see that most people will return to you when you follow up. I think I mentioned this way too many times, but that's true, especially when they realize that you mean business. Okay, for those of you who come from sales or business development background, you have one more tool available to you in addition to LinkedIn email and email. And this is not for you if you're not a sales professional, okay? You know, I want to make sure you don't use this tool if you're not a sales professional. But if you are, then your golden opportunity is cold calling the hiring manager, right? Give the hiring manager a call. Give him a brief of your profile on the phone, you know, very short, like 15 seconds, 20 seconds, of who you are, what you've done in your career, and ask for permission to send him an email. And in that email, your LOI goes to the body of the email, and this time you can also attach your resume to the email as well, right? But I want to open a parenthesis here. If you've never spoken with that person before, if they don't know you and that you're only reaching out with your LOI, do not ever attach your resume. People don't open attachments from third parties, so don't do that. And again, the cold calling is not going to work for you if you're not coming from a sales background, right? The reason why it only works for sales professionals is because they get to prove the very skills the hiring managers are looking for. Ability to make sales calls, even a cold call, right? They get to prove from the get-go that they have the skill. You know, no amount of writing on your LOI can prove this point as good as mustering up the courage, picking up that phone, and presenting your profile confidently, right? Then ending that call with a very clear call to action. This is very important, especially for those who are interested in private banking, wealth management, you know, sales and asset management, B2B sales. Speaking about wealth management or private banking or even real estate sales, in your LOI, I need you to mention your sales figures as well as the approximate net worth of your clients. Because selling $100,000 worth of investment to someone with $300,000 net worth is very different than selling the same product to someone worth $10 million, right? So in this case, in the second one, your addressable market size is significantly greater with the second one. So your employer is going to get interested, right? Will be very interested in creating a different solution for that client. Remember something, right? As a sales professional, your biggest asset is your client portfolio. Okay, let's move on. Before I continue with the intricacies of LOI, I want to talk about expectations here. Because your happiness in this entire process is all about the reality minus expectations, right? I mean, you're happy, you're energized, you're motivated only when you meet the expectations. That's why I want to make sure those expectations are properly managed, so you get to continue to have the motivation to implement the program. Okay? So now I want to talk about why LIG works well and how to manage your expectations. So what were the three things? Right hiring manager, right LOI, and right profile. So if you get all these three right, you will 100% achieve results. It's mathematics, right? You're not the first one who took the program. I mean, I have way more than enough sample size. And it works. It works in engineering, it works in consulting, investment banking, biology, chemistry, R&D, NGOs, other humanitarian organizations, you name it. The only exception I can think of is certain government jobs that only hire based on the outcome of government tests, right? Other than that, it will work for you. But it doesn't mean you won't have rejections. Of course you will. It's a game of probabilities. With online applications, if you had a 1 in 1,000 chance of getting your ideal employment, with LIG, you'll probably have about 30% chance of getting the employment, right? 50% chance of finding a great employer, and 100% chance of finding a regular employment. But you will still get rejections. So I need to prepare you for the reality. I'm not a politician trying to win the election here by sugarcoating everything, right? Because if you know the reality, then you can mentally prepare yourself, right? At this stage, because of your previous online applications and all those rejections, all those times that you wasted your time, one of two things happened to you, right? Either your self-confidence hit rock bottom, or you have become emotionally immune to online rejections. Now, if your self-confidence hit rock bottom, I won't tell you to pick it up. Instead, I told you already that it had probably very little to do with you. The majority of the jobs online are either fake ones or they never had real intention to hire you, right? So why do you destroy your self-confidence for something that wasn't even real in the first place? That makes no sense. It makes no sense. I hope now you're looking at things very differently. Now, if you're already in the second stage, which means that you are already emotionally immune to rejections, I have bad news for you. You are not yet emotionally immune to receiving rejections to your LOI. Unfortunately, you'll go through the same process all over again. Just like how you did at the beginning, like how you started getting receiving rejections to your online applications and that it felt horrible, you'll have that same feeling again initially. Yeah. But this time it'll feel even more powerful because it is very personal now, right? Engaging with these top level hiring managers, receiving a rejection from them personally, directly, is not very easy. It takes some getting used to. It adds to your character. It thickens your skin. That's what you need. If one of those 3 key elements isn't right, they'll do one of the following. They'll ignore you. They'll tell you they don't have a position, or they'll tell you to apply online in their websites or get in touch with HR. That's what they're going to say, right? Those of you who have at least some sales background will not be affected by this, I'm sure. You already know the rejections are just part of the game. You're experienced in handling rejections, but some of you will feel bad. I just want you to know that it is what it is. For every one person who will be interested in you, there will be 19 others who aren't. And the reason sometimes can be out of your control, right? You can prepare the perfect LOI, right? The perfect and most relevant profile, but your research may be off because of limited information you could find online, right? It is possible. That's why you won't have a 100% positive response rate. You'll probably have 1 positive response out of 20, but rather 5 out of 100. That's at least what the median average for the majority of other LIG members. But if you get all the 3 right, they'll at least respond and keep you in the loop. They won't want to lose such an opportunity of a strong match. In addition, there's one more aspect working on your benefit here, behind the scenes. You know what it is? You give that hiring manager an opportunity to work with someone who is loyal to him or to her. It's an easy guess that someone you yourself hired to the organization, right, will be very loyal to you. Instead of someone who is recommended by HR or by another colleague, by another director, manager, you are the one who gave a shot to that candidate. And you know that that candidate is going to feel gratitude towards you, right? He or she will be loyal to you, right? And will deliver her best at work just so you never regret your decision. Because you are the one who's entirely responsible for giving that candidate that opportunity. Look, the world of corporate games can sometimes turn into a tug of war. Yeah, there's always competition, not only between companies, but more so between teams and employees. Right? The hiring manager also has competition. He also or she also has ambitions to move up and needs soldiers who are loyal to them and who deliver their best while protecting their backs. They're always office politics, conflict of interest, competition, right? So by hiring someone who's loyal to you, you will have another soldier in the battle, someone who will not backstab you, but also work extra hard so you never regret your decision. Simplify things. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We value trust and loyalty almost as equally as competence. Yeah? Now I want to talk about how you should prioritize the process, right? So what I want is, first couple of days before you implement the program, you do nothing but thinking about your target industry and your target role. Research about it and find out about the future benefits of that particular field. I have a great video on YouTube about this. It's called The Hidden Secrets of a Successful Career. Take a look at that and understand your peripherals, right? Think about your transferable skills. It's not the topic of LIG, but I think it's very important for your career. So I want to summarize it here very quickly. You want to choose a career that meets 2 major criteria. First one is that your pay in that field increases as you spend more years on a job. Okay? And the second one is your job security increases with more years on the job. And they come from having high entry barriers, right? And the biggest enabler for a high entry barrier, as well as an increased pay, is the progression of complexity in your job. Meaning, you want to be in a role that the complexity increases with years on the job. For example, in that video, I gave an example of a civil engineer, right? An example of Palm Jumeirah, an artificial island in Dubai. The project manager who handled that project, had already 40 years of experience, 40, right? I met him. He's a very senior project manager. And his income and the job security is proportional to the difficulty of the problem he solved. But if the complexity in your field doesn't increase with years on the job, then you will never be able to justify an increased pay or even maintain your job security. Fine, you get older, you're more wise, right? Your wisdom factor that comes with the age deserves a bit of a premium, but not that much. For example, let's give HR as an example. 2 HR professionals, one with 2 years of experience and the other one with 30 years of experience, right? Now, field of HR isn't very technical, right? So you get to reach the top of your experience in as little as 2 months. It's 2 months. Now tell me, why on earth would you want to pay more to someone with 30 years of experience? You don't. You wouldn't pay, right? So please keep this in mind. When you're choosing your target role, you have to make sure you benefit from the increased pay and also the increased job security. Now, there's one exception about this, with this, and if you're in sales, fine, the complexity of your job doesn't increase with more years on the job, but your client portfolio increases. Your client portfolio is your biggest asset as a sales professional. You've got nothing else. I mean, you develop the skills very quickly. Let's continue. Let's break down the activities, right? I want you to spend enough time. You think about how long it needs, right? To find that role before you start with LIG. Stare at the ceiling, search online. If you have friends, talk to them and have a clear understanding of what your role is going to be moving forward in your career, right? And how it will benefit you in the long run. Again, in terms of increased pay and job security. And think about the increased complexity of your job in terms of its technicality. Okay. There's one more important thing here. Yes, I say that think about that field, but also keep in mind the transferable skills. Like if your background is in public accounting, obviously you can't jump to marketing. So you need to have transferable skills. Okay. So now day 1, I want you to spend 1 full day on writing your LOI, right? From early morning until late midnight. In that day, I want you to be able to develop at least 20 versions of your LOI. Right? Each new version will have to be better than the previous one, right? There are many examples in this page below this video. Please read them all carefully. You know, there are good ones and there are bad ones. You will see my comments on each one of them, right? Okay, so when you get to the document, I want you to think about the rough sketch, right? Don't put things in sentences yet. Just think about what to mention. Think about your accomplishments, right? The brand names of some of your most important employers, right? In the past. If you're in sales, talk about your client portfolio. You know, at the end of the day, as I said, that's your biggest asset, right? If you're an architect, compile the pictures of your designs and share the website URL. Again, just the bullet points first, right? Nothing goes in a sentence yet. And once you've finished listing down the bullet points, then weave them in your LOI slowly and delicately. Make sure the document flows very well. It's free of any grammar or spelling errors, right? It's just the pure beauty of a document, something you're proud of. Remember, it'll be sent to 100 people. So you have to make sure it's a top-notch document, right? Again, once again, there are many examples here. Read them all. Learn from my comments on the bad ones as well as the good ones, you know. By the end of that first day, you're done with the document. Do not move on to the second stage until you finish something amazing that you're proud of. Day 2, you'll start your people research. You spend your day on LinkedIn and copy the URLs of those hiring managers you targeted in an Excel file, right? You create a list of 100 people. It'll take you about a day of work with this one to gather this list. Then once you're done, day 3, you will send your LOI to all of them in 1 day, right? So in total, all I need from you is just 3 days. How many days have you spent on making online applications? How many hours? How many months? All I'm asking is 3 days. After that, you can relax a bit, wait for the responses, go hang out with your friends, have fun, you deserve it, right? And then in the following 1 week, follow up with those that didn't respond, and then get into your interviews with the ones that responded positively, right? After 7 days, you only do your follow-up, right? And as I said before, majority of the responses will come in after you follow up. Now I want to answer 2 commonly asked questions, right? This is not the first version of LIG. I say LIG 2.0, but in reality it is LIG 20.0. I update the program very regularly based on the results and input I get from the members. So I want to address the 2 most common questions that I wasn't able to make it clear in the last version. The first question is, how am I going to be sure they have a position for me? Yeah. And the second question is, isn't sending 100 LOI too much, right? Isn't that an overkill? Let's start with the first one. How are you going to know they have a position for you? The simple answer is, you don't have to, right? Just like how you go out for fishing and you don't necessarily get to see the fish with your eyes, right? But your presumption is that the fish is available because there were many before, right? So it's very similar. There's so many things happening behind the curtains that you're not aware of. For example, people get fired all the time, right? They may have already been fired or about to be fired, and only the hiring manager knows this. No one else knows this, right? Maybe the hiring manager is already on the lookout for another talent, but hasn't yet made it official or made up his mind or her mind, right? Maybe he's on the soft lookout, meaning he's considering that idea, but he's not very sure. You don't know this, only hiring manager knows this. Hiring manager may consider you a better fit to do the job than what he or she has in hand currently, right? Happens all the time. So many LIG members, hundreds of them, simply just replaced the current employees, right? Hundreds of them. Hiring manager wasn't necessarily looking for a role officially, not at all, but they were impressed by your outreach. You got all the 3 key elements right, and they wanted to give you a shot instead of that person. That person had a shot. It's finished. Move on. Your turn now. Or another one. Maybe one of the employees is quitting soon, or maybe on the notice period already. Again, it's all behind the curtains. Or an employee may be transferring to another department. Again, only hiring manager knows this. Department is expanding, right? Expanding the workforce. There are literally hundreds of reasons. They may have that position right now, or it may soon to be available, right? Or you may have just planted that thought in his mind that makes him question one of their employees who is not necessarily a top performer or the most loyal one, right? In either case, if you get the 3 key elements right, they won't let you go. That's why I use the analogy of fishing. There's almost always fish available. You just need to have the right hook and the right bait. Yeah, you get these 3 things right, your research, your top-notch LOI, and your relevant profile, you will eventually have major success. The second question was 100 LOI. Isn't that too much? For some of you, yes, but I have a good reason to suggest the number 100. Let me explain. Realistically, you'll have about 5% conversion rate, right? This is the average most LIG members are getting, right? Some of them get significantly more, but some of them get less. So in a normal distribution, it is about 5.3%. So, and this is the median average, meaning every 100 LOI you send, we are statistically confident that about 5 people will get back to you positively. Now, why 100 though? And now I'll tie this back to statistical confidence and regression to the mean. Now, late last year, we conducted an independent survey with Maven Insights with 1,000 LIG members. We asked them so many questions, right? Because I wanted to collect data and better understand how I can improve the program, right? Mostly, I wanted to monitor the results, right? I'll talk about the details of these findings in the final module, the last module, but one thing is relevant here, so I have to mention it. From that study, we noticed that the conversion rate is 5%, just a little above 5%. Now, there are many variables, but overall, I want you to trust this figure of 5%. But here's the interesting part. When your conversion rate is 5%, it doesn't mean you'll get one positive response from every 20 LOI you send. You can get one or nothing. If you send 40, it still doesn't mean you'll get 2 positive returns, right? You probably, the probability of getting 2 positive responses out of 40 LOI is increased, fine, but it's still not statistically significant. You may still not get anything at all. It's just pure luck. That's why statistical confidence is key here. But you can say with almost 95% certainty that if your conversion rate is 5%, you'll get about 50 returns out of your 1,000 LOI. Now, you don't need to send 1,000 LOI to get 50 returns. You don't have time to attend hundreds of interviews. 5 will be enough for you. That's why 100 will probably be high enough of a number to generate enough interest. I hope this point is clear. And another point here is the momentum. The more responses you'll have in a short amount of time, the more motivation you'll have. And that motivation will give you more energy. It's all about keeping that energy levels high, right? If you send a couple today, a couple from tomorrow, a couple LOI tomorrow, then you'll run out of energy. If you're sure you have done your best in all the steps, right? 100 isn't necessarily the limit. How many online job applications have you made so far? Thousands? I mean, if you do 20 a day, you do 600 a month, right? So if you've been unemployed for 3 months, then you made close to 2,000. 2,000 applications with no results, right? I mean, if you gave online applications a shot of 2,000, then I'm sure you can give LIG a shot of at least 10% of it, 200. But again, it's very unlikely you'll ever get to the second batch. Very, very unlikely. I'm confident you'll generate so much interest in the first 100 batch, especially after your follow-ups. And you'll pass some of those interviews, and you'll have enough really high-quality job offers. And those job offers will be from great employers because you've done your research. It'll all be done in the first batch of 100. But hey, if you don't get any positive responses in your first 100 batch, I want you to reach out to me first before you move on with the second batch. I would really want to find out what is going on because it would be a very rare case. So I would really want to ask you questions, dig deeper, and understand where things went south for you. Things will happen for you. You'll see. See you in the next module.